Peace, family. Happy Wednesday. We're in the middle of the week. Y'all, this is a special edition of Earth Mama Healing. We're going to talk about voting black folks in the democratic process and why we need to support each other, why is it important to vote, and why is it important for us to be a part of the process and not just going to vote, but actually, being a part of the coalition and, all of that. So we're going to talk about that. So Ms. Cecile Nunley called me, and I want you to kind of talk a little bit about why you really wanted to have this conversation on air.
Okay. First off, I think we have a great panel here. All of us are running for the Assembly District Democrat Delegates. And I would like for everybody to just take a minute, and we're going to introduce everyone. So my name is Cecile Nunley, and I am running for Assembly District 7, and that is under McCarthy, and that will be this Sunday. And next?
I am David Clements. I am running to be a delegate in District 7.
Yes.
And I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Vicki Boyd, and I'm also a delegate in District 7. And please, everyone, please do come out and vote for the African American Coalition, who are representing, McCarty's district, Assembly Member McCarty's district. Thank you.
And my name is James Sweeney, and I'm also running to be a delegate, a Democratic delegate. I'm running in District 9, which is Cooper's district, and we believe in strong representation and inclusion, and the plain facts are we have not always been included, so we have to include ourselves. So it's just like any other event, you have to deal yourself in. And so that's what we're doing. We're dealing ourselves in the democratic process.
And last but not least?
Yes, and I'm Karen Burney, and I'm also running to become an Assembly District Delegate in District 7 this Sunday. And so I'm hoping that with this interview that we'll be able to give you more information about why it's important for African Americans to come out and vote and participate in this process.
So where we are right now with representation in this process?
Well, the whole thing that we are trying to do, this is the first time we are putting together the African American Democrats Coalition, because we feel it's so important that we have to have our voice heard. We need to show up. When we show up, people don't have to ask where we belong. We show up, they know we're African American. So if we can show up with 300, 400, 500 folks in the room, they will listen to our voice. We have to make sure that our voices are heard. It is so important that we get in that process, because we can help set that agenda, that policy agenda. We can help set who's going to get our endorsements. We can even set, and this is an exciting possibility, we can set the next chair, the statewide chair of the Democratic Party, if we can all mobilize together and really work together to make everything happen.
Right. So for Sacramento, how is it working for us here in Sacramento to bring it locally?
Okay. And any of my colleagues, you can
jump
feel
right
free
on.
to jump in.
District 7, well, 7 and 9.
Yes.
What district? You said 7.
District 7.
7.
Yeah.
And to respond to that question, historically in Sacramento, African Americans have represented less than 1% of the people that come out to vote. Yes.
Less than 1%?
Less than 1% of African Americans.
What is our percentage in Sacramento?
I believe it's about between 15 and 20%.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And then we only are showing up as far as representation at 1%, which is a problem because we have to get out.
Right.
So we want to be sure, and we carefully crafted our name, African American Democrats Coalition, because we wanted people to be sure that we're reaching out to our community to bring them in and make them a part of the process, make them feel welcome.
So how do y'all propose to do that?
I think that you asked the right question.
Okay.
When you say, how do we propose to do that? We really need to talk about, well, what does a delegate do? because we have to be very basic so that we can lay out what a delegate does. And they help with the endorsements, as Cecile has indicated. They help determine what are we going to push, whether it's our health care, the issues, the procedures. It's like saying it's not just a Democrat that you vote for, but you also want to make the policy. You want to design the policy. And so that's why this is historical, but it is also a way of saying we don't want to be included in a minimal way. We want to be included in a maximum way. And so when we do that, as a delegate, we're helping to set the agenda. All the delegates get together and do that. When it comes to who do you decide is going to be your senator, your statewide senator? Well, they have to give an endorsement. The endorsement comes by the delegates. So the delegates are important. And so we need to be in that part of the process. Wherever decisions are made, African Americans need to be there to help shape and make those decisions in concert with other delegates.
Yeah, and I think one of the key items was our goal and our mission has been inclusion at all levels of decision making. I believe that's one of the core principles. And I'm sorry, Vicki, you were going to say.
It's fine. No, but and part of that also is, increasing the awareness in voter registration. Bringing in the youth, which is my own personal passion. Getting the kids, because they passed the law a couple of years ago that you can get kids pre-registered. excuse me, now at 16 and 17, to so that by the time they're 18, they slide right in. And what we need to do is, because we're setting the groundwork, all of us, I'm assuming, all started voting. We're all lifelong Democrats, but we started voting at 18, and what that did is set us up for the rest of our lives to be active in the political process. So we've, within my own family, I come from a very politically active family from generations back, decades back. But they part of the process is when you become of age. Everyone in our family celebrates that, and they're watching the the return or the lead up and voting. It's like it's like the Super Bowl for political junkies. Everyone's coming out, and so you as a child see all of your adults and your family members. Everyone's involved, or if they're not working on someone else's campaign, they're involved in the process. So they're all ready to go. So from then on, every midterm and general election, you vote because the importance of it, but also that you're a part of it. You started at 18, or actually when you started when you were a child, because you're going on campaigns and in your stroller with your with your placard and everything for a candidate. So like I said, I think me personally, voter registration is a big part of what we can bring to the delegate body. Is encouraging our not just black people, but everyone to be a part of this process. Sacramento County, this last time we were at 68% or I think 64% of voter turnout on this last election for a midterm. It's normally like 14%, but because of the new polling centers and the whole voting process, it's changed. So everyone is getting involved, but we need to bring in black kids and adults to get engaged in the voting process.
So I'm going to put this question out there. Why should black people be voting for Democrats? Because I think that's a question I get a lot from young people. Like, why are we so loyal to this party? Why should, and I don't have an answer because I just can't find it, but I think that would be a great question to ask.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, one of the reasons, in my humble opinion, is our black families do not understand the importance of participation in the mainstream of Democratic Party politics. They don't understand it. It's abstract. We are living the change that we want to be through by seeing us on this podcast. We want you to know that you are our family, and that your family has been missing in the leadership structure of the Democratic Party. That's a fact. Because there has been a concerted effort to diminish the African American vote in America. The social conditions, the economic conditions, and so forth. Families are so involved with protecting their families and their kids and so forth. They can't relate to this other campus that exists, that elects presidents and senators and state politicians and city politicians and so forth.
Well, the other reason is, you know, the question, why vote Democratic? You are voting Democratic because you want to support people who want to support you. So this is looking at what is my self-interest? What are my interests? For example, we look at low-performing schools, and there is a matrix to look at that. There are test results, there are reading results. We know the low-performing schools. Well, who is populating those low-performing schools? Overwhelmingly, we are the ones who are populating those low-performing schools. So when you say, well, when you vote Democratic, when you have somebody who is the head of the Black Caucus in Sacramento, like Dr. Shirley Weber, and she put a bill together and made sure $300 million was put on the table for low-performing schools, it is in my self-interest to vote for that because it's my children, it's that family that Clements talked about that has not fully participated that's going to benefit in terms of resources, books, supplies, trying to ensure that the teachers respect our kids. Yes. You know, where there are too many suspensions and too many push-outs. So these are things that happen to us. So we've got to figure out, well, what is in our self-interest to make it better for us? And so we ask that question, and the answer comes back. Do you want the tax relief that a Trump is giving you? Or do you want the services that you need because you need the nutrition programs because we found out through nutrition understanding that we even have kids, black kids in college who are hungry. We didn't even know that. You assume, well, because they were in college, everybody was doing fine.
Right.
Well, but the legislators who are addressing that issue happen to be Democratic. So you ask why? Because you want to look at self-interest of the family that we were discussing.
Yeah, and that goes back to setting that policy. We want to set that policy to be those low-performing schools, the nutrition program, and one that is affecting our young people especially is the criminal justice system reform.
Absolutely.
That's a huge one that impacts our community unfairly. Not because, you know, we're out there doing whatever, but we all know you get profiled, especially our young African American males. They're getting profiled, they're getting followed, they're getting this, and they're getting encouraged. And then we talk about that school to prison pipeline. It already is starting at so young. And I do want to bring up one issue we talked about, and Mr. Clements brought it up, where this whole coalition, and this is just a piece of the coalition that we have here, It's multi-generational. We have from 20-year-olds up to 70-year-olds. We have people that are single with no children, to people who are married with children, to grandparents, some who are grandparents, maybe some who are great-grandparents, because it affects our entire spectrum of our whole life cycle, from where we're needing health care for those prenatal services for the young ladies, so that the babies can grow up healthy, and then getting in school when they can be educated appropriately.
And at early age,
Yes.
so that we support. Democrats usually are supportive of family issues versus financial issues. So education, like universal preschool, things that will affect our kids are at a very early age, and the basis to success later on, not just about going to college, but you have to be set up and be able to, one, get accepted to college, but be able to function and graduate through college. And that starts at a very early age. And if, when we go into the segregation of schools and the expulsion and all of that, we have to have a voice to say, no, this is not acceptable, and that we push back and help the electeds know our voice and know what we expect from them to represent all of us, in the community, no matter what race, but also that we, as Black people, have these problems in our, in our community, and we need that to be addressed. So that's what part of being a delegate is pushing back on that and helping to lead that, legislation.
So y'all do have a couple of questions in the room, in the chat room, but I'm gonna get them. You want to say something? Because this is where
well, I want to say one component that should be that every community, 2/3 of the federal and state of California financial budget goes for schools. 2/3. Yet in Sacramento, the school boards that control the policy of the school districts are controlled by everybody but Black.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did those people get on those school boards? That's what we represent. We want to tell you that story.
Yes.
So that we bring our fundamental leadership, the people that really hold the community together, onto those school boards. And how to do that, you learn that by being a delegate, you learn that by participating on the campus of leadership.
Exactly. It is not necessarily, as some of you already touched on, being loyal to the Democratic Party, but trying to get people in place, the candidates that best represent your interests and the interests of your family and your community.
So that brings me to this question. Sister Alika, I don't know if y'all know what Sister Alika is. She basically said, how has classism and Black elitism separated the Black vote in Sacramento? Because you just talked about voting your interests, and so we think all Black people have the same interests, which probably is not true. We have different levels, maybe trying to get to the same place, but
Sure.
how does that work?
Well,
Great question.
Well, first of all, that is a wonderful, that's a wonderful question, because too often we don't vote our interests, and so I think classism plays a role. Classism and elitism. Classism and elitism is less concerned with the masses, less concerned with those people who are doing whatever they're doing. But I believe that what we need to do is diminish the role of classism and elitism. And that's why we come together as a coalition. That's why we talk about being multi-generational. That's why we talk about some people are working and some people work for themselves. Some people have different economic scenarios, but we have to say we are all in the same boat.
Exactly.
If you mess with one member of my family, then you messing with all members of my family. So yes, elitism is an aspect that we have not properly addressed. We don't address it among each other.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about this, about, you know, some black person will walk down the street and one black person won't say anything to the black person. Somebody else might say hello.
Yeah.
Or, well, gee, well, I don't know you. Well, we still have to reach out.
Yeah.
We learned that whether you're in the suites or the streets,
Yeah.
Right.
There you go. I like it.
whether we're in the suites or the streets, we need to be trying to do what we can to work with one another.
Yeah. And
And if we do that with our policies, our procedures, then we break down the classism that the sisters so advantageously brought to the fore.
And I think the other scary thing, and we all have seen the statistics, you know, those few make it out or make a few dollars or whatever, but it only lasts one generation.
No, that's
Then
true.
the next generation
Have to redo it again.
have to redo it again. So we're, you know, where are we? We found out, hey, we got to take care of ourselves, take care of our kids, take care of everyone, because we got to make changes that last.
That's right.
Exactly.
Generational wealth. and
Generational wealth is something that we have been lacking. Now, a lot of that is not because of somebody doing something wrong. A lot of that is because of the system. It's set up against us.
Well,
and knowledge about
Yeah.
how to do it.
Yes.
And then having electeds, you know, that help with the legislation. That's where it comes from. You know, you're never going to advance if you don't know. And that's what we're trying to do, is to bring that knowledge to everyone of, you know, all economic to, you know, racial, because that's the whole point. Knowledge is the, and you know, it's the cliche, but knowledge is power.
Yes, it is. And ultimately, I think we have way more in common than differences
Yes.
as African Americans,
Yeah.
and we need to unite to try to get policies and individuals in that are again going to represent our interests as a whole.
And I'd like to say, it's important that you know, we don't need to be ashamed to say that we're in the middle class if we're in the middle class. You know, I mean, Martin Luther King was middle class. I mean, that didn't stop him from being concerned with those people who did not have multi-generational wealth. We need to act like it's okay to say I got a job, or it's okay to say I own my own business. We don't need to think that the only way that we represent black is to say it always represents lack. That is not true.
Yes.
That is not true. We bring a little bit to the table. When the Sister Cecile, who helped put this event together, you understand that her background and training has to do with numbers, has to do with understanding budgets, these are all things that impact the policies.
Yes.
So you're not just running for delegate to be running for delegate. You bring in something to the table besides spit and enthusiasm. You know, you bringing something to the table. You bringing people who have skills,
Yes.
and those are the skills that can be passed on.
Well, and plus,
Yeah.
Our weakness as a people is our divisiveness. We have not learned how to gather. We have not learned how to build our campus so that the relationships between each other becomes our greatest strength. And the social caste system, I guess it's part of the remnants of slavery and intergenerational discrimination against African Americans to limit their ability to affect policy changes through use of their vote. And as a result, many of our people have retreated into isolationism, and they don't know how to gather. They do not know how to build coalition. That's what we represent here today.
Exactly. And so we're trying to change that narrative by educating African Americans on the power they really possess.
Right.
And that power involves us uniting and getting out and voting. Someone mentioned the midterm elections and how, record numbers turned out. And I think a lot of that had to do with education. That a lot of African Americans who didn't know their power and about the political system went out and voted because they've been following because of the changes in, administration at the top level. And so they've set out to educate themselves. So that's why a lot of them did show up for the midterm elections this time. So we're hoping that the same thing happens this time by, educating yourself about this process, the delegate process. Then hopefully more African Americans will turn out for this as well, because it's actually the first step in getting the policies and people in place that are going to best serve us.
And getting, and with that, it's, not just, we're a coalition of, obviously different sexes, but it's to getting women in office, Black women in office too, but at least, representing our constituency. So it's getting, and positions, in the electorate that are at the upper levels too, so, we may have someone in 2020 as a Black woman who may, run. She hasn't, declared, but, we looked at Stacey Abrams in Georgia, who, we can all say won, and this goes into voter suppression and all that, which is another whole issue for our community. So, but just getting that, women of color in elected office, and breaking that barrier too.
So Dr. Ramona Bishop has a comment. She says she would like to suggest that established Dems must be informed, not simply subscribe to the desire of particular special interests that may be out of alignment or in line. And so I was thinking, even on some Black people who were voting this year when we did the thing, and hearing some women saying we definitely will not be voting for a certain brother because he's Black, I guess, in Elk Grove. And so right away, here's a Black man. We want to see Black people succeed, and he still won. But it's the thing of like, all Black folks don't have the same interests. And how do we discern that? Like, how do we know that we are really going, with those who will vote for delegates, how do we know that y'all really are the right people we should be voting for? Because you're Black and you saying the right words of color and all people. Because when I hear that, I kind of get turned off, because I want to hear, I spend a lot of time with Latinos, and they unapologetically go for themselves. They never say of color or Black people too, and they just be like, I've been all over Latin America. There's more Black people in Latin America than there are here in the U.S. Been all over Cuba, Honduras, Nicaragua, Black people everywhere. But with us, sometimes I don't know if that's really enough to say, I'm really going to vote for you, because I think me and you share something.
Yeah.
Well, let me say
that.
Okay.
We need to learn how to express our identity. We let other people frame our identity. This is why, and I'm hesitant to speak on a lot of these subjects.
No, please, I think we got to talk about it
because
so people will be informed.
we want the we to speak.
Right on.
We want the we to speak. It's more powerful than the individual voice. But we have lacked identity in the Democratic Party. Now, of course, the media presents information to the public at large, and a certain portion of us vote. and that's framed by other people. But we represent professional interests in our people.
All right.
And so we've got to gather them. So I'm here to express a new identity, a base for the base of black folks. And come and see. You'll be hearing more from us.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
And,
Can you tell us a little bit about that identity though? Because I think you hit on something that was great, because that's kind of like, you know, we throw black around like, oh, that person's black. But what is the identity? Because what Latinos have is identity.
Well,
which is obvious, because Latinos, like, that could be Cuban, that could be Puerto Rican.
When you give it, what happens, for an example, if a black entity in Sacramento gives an event, I think the closest thing that inspires me is the Martin Luther King celebration when we go to the Capitol. Where do all those black folks come from? I mean, they're all over J Street. They fill up the convention center. They're there. That is power.
Yes, definitely.
When you can gather your people through a common identity that they feel they are part of it, then you are powerful.
Exactly.
Our dilemma is lack of power, because we have never organized ourselves. We've never met each other. This is my first time here, for an example. You know, and then just in this group, in terms of our communicating on our delegate, I think we may have made contact with about 20,000 people.
Exactly.
In 2 weeks.
Yes.
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 Making a way out of no way.
That is profound. So that energy and that synergy and that power we want to expand, because that's what will deliver delegates to the Democratic Party. That's what will deliver new young people to run for office as a city councilman, as a supervisor in a county, as a school board member,
as a water board member. There are many positions that are in that place. But I would like to hitchhike off of that notion of identity. And you said you wanted to do identity, purpose, and direction. That's really what the goal is. But we need to understand who we are. So identity, purpose, and direction. We have to recognize when Obama ran for president of the United States, there was a 95.6% African Americans that came across the entire country and voted for Barack Obama. So whether you were high, whether you were low, whether you were rich, whether you were poor, whatever generation you were, people did not expect that to occur. When the gentleman out of Mississippi was the first senator in 25 years to be a Democrat elected out, was it
Mike Espy?
No, not Mike. Doug was the first senator. It was black women who 98% strong voted and made that happen. That's the kind of coalition we're talking about. It's not like we don't have examples of intergenerational unity. When Jesse Jackson ran for president in '84 and '88, and there were over 3 to 5 million blacks registering to vote, that helped. When Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972, and her slogan was unbought and unbossed, you know, this was, there were people who were saying, well, why are you running as a woman to be president of the United States? But the fact of the matter is, we have to build on our prior successes. We may not even understand some of the successes that we have had. I mean, listen, when Doug Jones was supposed to lose his Senate race and black women voted 98%, we had never had 98% before. We thought we were doing something when we voted for Obama at 95.6%, which was all across the country. Well, now, if we can do these same things, that makes us able to negotiate.
I know.
And if we can negotiate, we're negotiating for the identity of our children.
Mm-hmm.
We're making sure they get resources.
Yes.
And so if we can do that, then as was mentioned, we have the identity, we have the purpose, and we have the direction. That don't mean we're gonna agree on everything.
I agree. I don't
Exactly.
Yeah, we're
I
not
don't think
looking for.
But I will say this in the room, so I'm reading the comments as I'm doing. Like, for instance, we're all sitting here, there's no millennial in this table.
That's so.
And that's concerning, because if I was looking at this as a young person.
But millennials were invited.
No.
And they're on
okay.
our
No,
side.
listen. See, I think
on the coalition.
I think one of the things
Yeah.
that, like, when you really watch people, when they're trying to get some, they always acknowledge things that we know that are lacking.
Yeah.
And then they have a plan to say, this is how we're going to fix that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, for instance, when I was growing up and I was around a lot of elders always had young people with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Always. They
Right.
never even went to things without one. So that way, the information gets passed on without you having to do a refresher course.
Yeah.
It's like I've been with it, I mean, growing up. I mean, even in the '60s, there's always been young people
That's
with
right.
the leaders.
Yeah.
That's how you transfer the vision.
We
Yeah,
have,
but on our slate, we have millennials. We have even younger than millennials. Okay, let's just
Well, you
be
know,
clear.
tell us some of it. No.
Sedalia King is one of our youngest folks, and she's on our slate. So just because you don't see the millennials here, one of the reasons why is because they have that limited ability to come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right now.
We got the ability to come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so we showed up.
Right now.
They can, but they were, it's not just that they were invited, but they're on our slate too.
Right,
We
right.
speaking for them,
and she's
we are
actually
there with them.
She's actually a legislative aide in the
Right.
state capitol. She
Yes.
works for Assemblywoman Atkins. So
Okay.
that is what, you know, she's in the mix. And
Sedalia.
she's
And-
Sedalia King, and she's in
and-
District
and-
8. Yeah.
And that's District 8.
District
and
8.
the other thing I'll come back to, we are organized.
Right now.
Okay.
No, she,
I
you
think
going
we
for your
have
kid,
about
you got
this-
time.
That's Taisha, I think.
You got time? You here.
That's Chris.
So come on around the back, and then the keys is in there.
Okay.
I'm sorry, she comes for keys.
Okay.
We are organized,
Okay.
and we will be building our coalition throughout the year, which will include all of our people, churches,
Under my
nonprofits,
computer screen, Christy.
business folks, political folks, to begin to discuss our community, but we're all equal. You know, there's no big I, no little you. Everybody's eligible to be part of the building of our coalition, because when we come together, that is when the language is spoken of leadership.
Right.
And this is what has been missing in our community, that we do not gather in our own town hall. We'll go to Hillary Clinton's town
Yeah.
hall.
Mhm.
You know, we'll go to some prominent person's town hall, but we want our town hall.
Right.
And then we will bring those folks who are the so-called leaders to us,
Yes.
and then they'll have to talk to us.
Yes.
Well,
And
Kamala Harris had a town hall, and you know, as a black woman, she brought in, you know, it was a huge room full of every, base of people there. So it's not that just because we're black that we only, can focus on or bring in black people. We bring in people who are like-minded into our issues, who want, everyone to succeed. The electeds, that they represent everyone, and that's, as African Americans, like you had said earlier, we all have different interests. We all come from different, economic, even, from different parts of the world. So, and with that generational, we bring different ways of thinking and different, so we are not a monolith. Yeah, so.
I say that.
Right, and
Just-
even though we are, none of the panel that you see here today are millennials, we do have every generation within our family networks,
Mhm.
you know?
Yes.
And we consider them when we make our decisions if we are elected. So it's not just thinking about ourselves. People mention about the schools, and so we would be concerned about schools for our kids and other kids. So we take everybody into consideration when we make our decisions
I
in
want
terms
to,
of putting people
one
and
thing,
policies in place.
because David mentioned this, and he talked about when it's Martin Luther King Day and you see that big crowd, that's power.
Yes.
And I want to be very clear that this Sunday, where we need to show up and show our power,
Yes.
and where if we can bring that whole, bring a group, if we could bring the size of the Martin Luther King parade,
yes,
if we
bring
can
your
bring it
family.
into that room, we will show power.
Yes.
And that's at 4100 Truxell Road on
Right.
Sunday. And then on Saturday, Mr. Sweeney, it's at 7125, and I forget the rest of the address. Governor's Circle.
Circle.
Yes.
Right here.
Yeah.
So it has to be, you have to be there on Saturday. You physically need to show up and show out, as they say, and that will be powerful because it will definitely have an impact on the folks in the room.
And
They
bring
will-
your family and friends.
bring your
a
family, your friends.
Every
So you
registered
don't need tickets or
Democrat.
nothing like that?
You don't
No.
need tickets. Come on in.
No,
Right,
exactly.
yeah, and if you're planning to look at the NBA game or the NFL, make it a point to get out there before that comes on. Or if you're going to church because it's Sunday, then come out and vote before you go to church. But as Cecile said, if we could get even half of the people that are planning to show up for the Martin Luther King, parade and celebrations, then that's exercising your power.
Yes.
Is there
You know,
time?
we
Is there a
can-
set time?
Yes.
10 to
Yes,
12:30.
most of them start at 10 o'clock, I believe. Saturday, they start at 9 o'clock, opening the doors. The actual voting, I believe, starts at 10:30 on each of them. So between 10:30 and 12:30 is when all of the physical voting will take place.
From 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m.
Mhm.
Because I didn't see the time on here,
Yeah,
on the flyer.
okay.
So just
And then, so each district has a different day when they vote. So I'll list them all on here.
Okay.
So then you go in, you get a chance to vote.
Mhm.
How do you find out the results?
Well, you will find out the results that day.
Yeah, they will be counting
Yeah,
that
they
day.
will be counting right there on the spot.
Right.
But the history of Sacramento is our people have not shown up.
But I think I don't know what the reason is, but I just know in the work that I do, is a lot of us just aren't connected to the political process.
Well,
That's why I'm asking you
That's
that.
a
And,
huge.
and this is one of the reasons why I talk about identity. So there has to be an identity that represents the people, and we have to be able to make the call
Mhm.
to the people to show up. Now, we'll be doing this throughout the year, because power is in the people,
It is.
not the reverse. When the people are there, there is a leader. You see, and the paradigm has to shift.
Well, people just have to learn to empower themselves,
Well, it's got to be more than that. This is why the we is so
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
I mean, your function with us, the dynamics of that is tremendously important. And others like you and you and you and you and you.
And you
When
said something.
when you exercise
Yeah.
your talents in the we, it expands your power.
And you said yourself that you bring together young people and they are talking about, well, my eyes lit up because I said, okay, well, maybe there's some of us who have been in elected and appointed positions. My family has been in politics for many, many years. My uncle was the first African American ever elected to the Berkeley City Council in 1961. I was elected to the Berkeley City Council 20 years later in 1981. Somebody was appointed as a judge. Somebody was appointed here. Somebody was appointed there. So I understand that it is necessary to break this process down in components so people can understand how it works, so that if they choose to participate, they can. But the power does reside in our people, and we have to realize that we have demonstrated that over again. Whether it's with what we did with 95.6%, and Obama won the presidency of the United States when nobody ever thought that was even possible. People said that they went their whole lives and that stuff, you know. And there was a hand. There was a hand. There were two hands, and they were picking cotton. And then there was a hand that was putting the ballot in the box. And the symbolism was the hands that pick cotton are now picking the senators, the presidents, the Congress people, the assembly people, the senators, the special district people. So those same hands that pick cotton are now making the selections today.
I got you. So let me read this real quick. April Jean says, "It is our responsibility to educate and empower. As someone who considers herself to be somewhat politically engaged, this is my first time hearing about the delegate elections." You know who she is.
Yeah.
She does a lot of work.
She's one of our
How do we build from here towards it? We cannot continue to talk about what black folks ain't doing.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
One thing I was going to say too, on piggyback on that, I get the symbolism with Obama and all that. It's great. I also think there's a problem when we go for this I feel good in seeing him, then the end result of what we get out of getting you there.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, if you guys get elected, then you go to the state, then you help maybe to elect someone else. I know there's a black woman that's, you know, but how do we make the feel good go to the work good?
Well, you know, when you talk about political science, that's a field of study. It's hard to describe the whole field in an hour. This is why I started with identity. You know, what is it that we represent? Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lives here who are descendants of ancestors, who are expressing an identity. And what is the name of the identity?
African American Democrats Coalition.
That's what that is. You have to have an identity to accomplish a mission to establish the base.
Yes.
There has to be a paradigm that's inclusive.
Yeah.
And you have to construct that. We have to construct that building. At least that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And unless we do it, it will be another generation that will have to come along and do that. And right now we have other races of people who are dominating
Yeah, because they're
our
focused
people.
on their identity.
And even setting the rules. When you just said April Jean, I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who have even been active and aware and woke or whatever you want to call it, and they're saying, I didn't even know how delegates got elected. I didn't know this process.
Right.
Exactly.
And you know, someone mentioned that they're holding it on a Sunday. Was that deliberately meant, you know, because they set the rules as to when this election was going to occur. So if you set the rules for it to occur when it's inconvenient for a certain group, then you've already controlled the whole narrative. So we need to be in those positions of power so that we can set it when it's convenient for us.
But if it's important to us, I don't care if they set it at midnight.
There you go.
Exactly.
I'm going to show them.
There you go.
Because I did
There
that
you
when I
go.
wrote a whole while.
There you go.
I
like
both
it.
times I was traveling. But you know what I'm saying? So I think there's a lot, you know, in the
Yes.
state. It's just good to know what you know, like how this identity, I think the identity piece, it has to go even beyond this, because I think that's why we're always behind the 8 ball, and we're always playing defense on an offensive game.
Exactly, and it's about not just us educating you, because she said she didn't know. It's also about you passing the information on, you know, about the delegate process and how important it is for African Americans to go out to vote. State delegates are elected every 2 years. They serve a 2-year term. So we would be serving for 2019 as well as 2020.
Which is presidential election.
Well, the presidential election, which is next year, there'll also be elections for national delegates as well. And that's also, that one runs every 4 years.
Is that coming up again?
Next year.
Yeah, and I want to say really quick, because we formed this coalition. This is the first time it's been formed, and we formed it for this assembly delegates. But the one thing that we are all committed to, and what each of us have talked about, is that this is not just going to be for this election. We have to keep this going. So this coalition is going to stay together. This is long term. And we have had support from a number of organizations, individuals within those organizations. I could throw out some names: Betty Williams, Cassandra Jennings, Barry Asias, some of the others,
BAPAC,
Ryan McClinton,
BAPAC, WAPA, Black Women Organized Political Action.
So many. We're trying to make sure this is deep, broad-based, and stays.
This is dynamic.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is moving, and it is. And some of us try to protect it, but it's moving. We need you and you.
Absolutely.
We're coming from Reconstruction. You brought up, you know, about Mississippi. You know, we've done this before. You know, we've had from Reconstruction, we had our people all the way into U.S. Congress. You know,
in the Senate from 1865 to 1870.
I'm a relative of someone who was the last U.S. Congress from North Carolina, George Henry White. We were there. They were basically played out. Everything was pulled back. It came back again, you know, when Henry Clayton Powell, you know, the whole new resurgence. But we just have to keep this going. We keep having these stops and starts and, you know, all this. And it's just, we know our power. You know, we know what we've been through. We know our ancestry, you know. And it's just a matter of just, you know, honestly not begging to be at the table. We rightfully are supposed to be there. You know, we are citizens of this country.
That's
right.
Yes, we made the table, we be in the table. You know, in the table.
Right, it's just a matter of just taking your rightful place at the table.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah. Okay, final thoughts.
Well, first of all, we want to thank you.
Yes.
Okay, because
so much.
You're providing community access and entree.
Yes.
What you are doing is you are also working with young people consistently, providing services and resources for young people. And so the one thing we wanted to say is that we need to make sure that this is not a episodic one-time occurrence.
Yes.
Right.
You know, so that when you need us or you want us, call on us so that we can be there.
I think every week we should have someone talking about politics and black folks.
I love
It's like every week people watch reality TV shows.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I don't, but I'm just saying.
Right.
I think sometimes we got to get out of this habit of, you know, just sensationalism, because that's killing us. But to be informed, like every week, there's certain things that I listen to every week when I'm driving or if I'm, you know, doing laundry, but I'm catching up on stuff. We have to do that, but I think it has to be there. And I grew up in the era of BET, so I remember watching Our Voices every week. I love Beth Smith. I remember watching News and Notes or listening to News and Notes on NPR. Like I got to hear, now I have to listen to WVON out of Chicago because that's the black radio station that still has programming, and besides the WURD in Philadelphia. So it's kind of like part of being a nation and having an identity is knowing where to go to plug in for you. You know, what's important? How do we feel about this and that and the other?
And to know your local politics,
Right.
but not just, you know,
Yes.
and also, you know, at
Yeah,
the, at
and
the,
how it feeds into that.
and at the national level,
I agree.
because again, you know, hopefully, a sister will be, you know, running for, in 2020. And, so we just like with Obama, that this isn't just a one-time thing. This is just, we're just part of the mix, you know.
Yeah, and she runs. What should be on our agenda like it was on other people's agenda that they pushed through with Obama?
Right.
I think sometimes we leave that, we're like, oh yeah, he gave everybody something. Yeah, but they were actively working as a group to get their stuff through.
Right.
Well,
Like, we
Kamala
have to
Harris,
work-
I mean, she's
yeah.
saying it, you know,
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
it's just getting everyone behind, you know, I'm sorry.
The spirit is here. I didn't know I was going to see James today. When I woke up this morning. You know, I didn't know I was going to see Cecile and Vicky when I woke up this morning. Today, I didn't know I was going to meet you today. But the synergy, the spirit
Yes.
is alive in this process.
Yes.
It's bigger than us. But we have to build it. And each one of us, and use the wonderful skills, the different people and gifts that people have to build this, because a solitary individual can't do what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, thank you. And one last,
Thank you so
No,
much.
go ahead.
one last thought, because we've been talking about, you know, African American women as well as just generation. You know, the whole saying after one of the last elections was, trust black women.
I know.
I want to leave with trust black women.
So real quick, as you wrap up, say your name, what you're running for, and you know,
Okay.
get your last plug in for them to come to the meeting.
All right.
Because I really want them to come out.
Yes. Cecile Nunley running for District 7. It is on Sunday, January 13th. Be there at 10 o'clock, 4100 Truxell Road.
David Clements, running for delegate, District 7. And I'm gonna vote for these two ladies here and this lady here.
How many delegates we get to go from Sacramento from each
7
area?
men and 7 women
Okay.
from each district. So District 7 gets 14.
And if we have 300 people show up, we will win.
I think we should have more than that.
Yes.
You know, I think that, you know, as many people as possible should show up and vote us in.
Yes.
Let me go around you too, because I'm not trying to forget anybody.
I'm Vicky Boyd, and I'm also in District 7. And please, again, just bring your family and friends. You know, if it's only you that can come, that's fine. But just, you know, load up your car, because we need the physical bodies there to vote.
And my name is James Sweeney, and I'm running in District 9, and that will be Saturday, January the 12th, at the Bakers Union local. It's at 7125 Governor's Circle, Sacramento, California. The doors open at 9, and I recommend that all candidates arrive around this time to distribute what they need to distribute, and realize that we're doing it because we can.
Yeah.
And I'm Karen Burney, and I'm running for Assembly District Delegate in District 7. And that is going to be on Sunday, January the 13th at 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of where District 7 lies. It's most of Sacramento, extending all the way out to West Sacramento, and all the way out to North Highlands and Antelope.
Very good.
And
also
you can
Fruit
log
Ridge
on to
CMS.
our Facebook
You
page
said
for
Fruit
more
Ridge and
information.
Consumers?
Fruit Ridge and Fruit Ridge CMS over
CMS.
here, but also to Sac State. It goes all the way over there, East Sacramento.
What about Elk Grove?
No,
Elk Grove is in 9.
That's in
Nine.
District 9.
So that's
would
your
be
9.
this,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
right.
so for more information and updates, you can log on to our Facebook page.
Yes.
And that's the African American Coalition.
Democrats Coalition.
Democrats Coalition.
You said the African
And
American
we want you to
Democrat Coalition?
not just log it on, but to share it. Share it with all your family and
Yes.
friends.
Yes.
And you can come as family and friends in groups and vote and exercise your power.
And we'll
So
have
As a
you can
registered
have-
Democrat.
Yeah, as a
Yes.
registered
And if you're
Democrat.
not registered, you can register to vote with there
That
at the site.
And we will be having some refreshments, little coffee, donuts, or something will be there. So everybody come out. You can't say you're hungry. We'll have some food or something for you.
Yes.
Okay, so Maureen Craft. Hi, Maureen. She said that Maureen Craft, which is running in District 9 as well as so is Kendra Lewis, will be running in District 8.
8, she's
Oh,
running
glasses.
in 8. Yeah, she's running
Put
in
my
8.
glasses on. Hey, so we got 9, and you're
We're 7.
7. So 8 is where?
8 is more the
Cordova,
eastern-
Citrus Heights, that in Ken Cooley's area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Assembly, then Ken Cooley and Sedalia King is our coalition person in 8.
Okay, that's good to know because I didn't know that.
Right, so we
Okay.
could post the maps
Yeah.
on the Facebook page so that you know exactly where you need to go and cast your vote.
That's why I think we should be talking about stuff like this more often.
Yes.
I'm just
Yes.
saying
Yes.
because
Yes.
Nancy Kennedy also is in 8, and also Belinda Malone is in 8 also.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. How many people are running? Do y'all know? I mean, altogether, that are black. That
I want to
people should
say
be concerned with.
in Assembly District 7, it's about 30 candidates and only 14 can be elected. And it's very similar. There's a few less in 8 and 9. I want to say it's close to 30 people running and only 14 will be elected.
Wow.
So your vote is critical.
It's
Yeah.
very critical.
Yes.
So you get to
Yes.
pick 7 men and 7 women. So
Yes.
you have 14 votes. So it's in each district.
So you get to vote twice, like for men and for women, or just go? You
Yeah.
have one vote.
No, you get to pick 14 people, 7 men, 7 women. So within that, in
You go in
each
and vote.
district, yeah.
Yeah,
And so you can take your ballot and your map
Why not?
marking
Right.
it 14 different times.
right. So the ballot will include all of the men and all of the women that are running as candidates. And from that group, you can, select 7 of each.
Right on. Thank y'all. Y'all broke that down. 'Cause I think that's important. I think we just got to talk about this more. So after y'all win y'all seats, I really want y'all to figure out how we can talk about those things that are important and how it connects to politics. I just think at the very end we got to figure out how do we connect the dots so we won't sound so crazy saying, well, I just ain't voting. But then be like, what are we going to do about these, what's happening in our community?
Yeah, you
I mean,
can't
all of
complain
it's
if
linked
you're not
up. All of
voting.
it.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right.
all connected, but also you just got to tell us.
Well, one of the things that Cecile mentioned earlier that I think is a really important point, when I found out about this, and I've been in the game a long time, they were talking about the last day to even sign up to be a delegate was 2 days after Christmas.
Yes.
So
Wow.
if you don't know
That
what's
was
going on, and
Yes.
I'm going to go visit my family.
Yes.
I'm going to do this, that, and the other. You say, well, why would they hold the election at that time?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, perhaps it's like you said earlier. I don't care if they hold it at midnight. If it's important,
Yes.
then that's what we have to know. But when we know those things, we're better able not to be outmaneuvered.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
and for you as a voter, it's like you need to show up to vote for us for your interests, because otherwise, your interests may not be addressed.
Yes.
And before I forget, 2 and 8, it's also Zima Creason is also
Yes.
running too.
I just wanted to say this short story. When I voted for Barack, I voted both times for Barack Obama, but the first time I was in Lottie No Grove, and it was an elder, black woman coming out, and it was full. It was like a long line, And she looked at me and she smiled. And I looked back at her and I was like I'm going in and hit that. That's that identity.
There you go.
Yes.
That to me was the best way I could. Yeah, but it was just like she did her part because she was definitely an elder. But I was like, and I'm going in there to get my vote in.
Yeah.
And I think that's
With your
the piece.
child on
Right.
your
That's the
hand to
piece
lead
that I
in,
think
yeah.
sometimes I think it's there. I just think it just has to be reconnected.
Yes.
So I think all the people. Yeah, I just think we're just right there.
Yeah.
So thank y'all for taking time with me this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
I learned a lot. I like a discussion. I grew up in the era of when people talked around tables like Phil Donahue and stuff. I mean, really, back in the day stuff. But I learned a lot, and I learned how to have voice. That's why I think it's important to hear people talking.
Yeah.
So you can be like, I got something to say.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
thank you all so much. Hold your positions. I have to go turn this off.
All right.
It is school. That's why I'm in here. That had a lot of really